If you follow our Instagram or YouTube channel, you know we have an unhealthy addiction to Nintendo and Pokemon products. Having previously built a number of Pokédex Gameboy consoles, we knew that this mint condition Hoenn Pokédex would be a great transplant for our next project. The first part of the build involved opening up the Pokédex console to determine the internal dimensions of the console and whether a Nintendo DS Lite would fit. After some quick measurements, it became obvious that the DS Lite internals would easily fit within the Hoenn shell. Unfortunately, the only parts that could be salvaged was the circuit board for the A and B buttons, as well as the original speaker. The original LCD and circuitry would be saved and used on a future project. Stay tuned. The original touchscreen glass lens could not be retained and it was removed and disposed of. The shell would then have to be trimmed to ensure that the DS Lite LCD screen would fit. This would involve additional machining of the rear half of the shell due to the raised bezel edge. The original LCD screen was then mounted into place. Our intentions for this Pokédex was to turn it into a fully functioning Game Boy Advance console. Similar to a DS Lite, the bottom of the shell was machined out to accommodate the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot. And as previous builds, we went about disassembling a DS Lite console down to its bare minimum. Then using a 100mm 30 AWG wire, we soldered the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot back to the DS Lite console. It was then a matter of test fitting the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot back into the Pokédex before being permanently mounted. With the DS Lite motherboard stripped to its bare minimum and the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot mounted, our focus then turned to connecting the A and B buttons, as well as mounting tactile buttons into the original location of the Pokédex, which would be used for start and select. The upper green button located on the right hand side would then be connected and used as a power button. To ensure as much clearance as possible, the original battery compartment was also removed. Temporary mounts were created for the motherboard, and additional soldering was completed for the directional, trigger buttons, and in anticipation for the volume control and USB-C charging ports. With some persistent hand filing, the USB-C charging port was added to the top half of the shell, as well as the Wi-Fi chip. With some additional hand filing, we managed to retain the original DS Lite slider, which was added to the left-hand side of the console. We were also able to add and retain the original earphone jack, which was added to the right-hand side of the console. As a lighter button was used in the position where the D-pad should be located, it was removed and replaced with circuitry from a DS Lite console, as well as rubbers from a Game Boy Advance and button from original Game Boy Color console. The directional pad now has a nice soft touch feel similar to that of the Game Boy Advance SP. And last but not least, tactile buttons were used for the left and right trigger buttons, and a more heavy-duty battery was installed from a DSi XL console. Enjoying this video? Now's the perfect time to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Wondering how the final console turned out? Well, judge for yourself. The concept all started by using an original Japanese Pokédex console and turning it into something special. The original light-up button was replaced with a D-pad from a DS-like console and controls from a Game Boy Color. The original A and B buttons were retained, as well as the light button, which was replaced and used as a power-up button. The two upper reset holes were replaced with the start and select button. Trigger buttons and USB-C charging were added to the top half of the console. The bottom of the console contains the volume controller from the DS Lite, as well as the original earphone jack. And who can't forget the original Game Boy Advance cartridge slot, while the rear retains a 1-watt speaker in lieu of the original quarter-watt speaker. And to finish it off, we added a custom-made gold chrome Nintendo logo to the front of the screen bezel. And to showcase this console, what better game than Mario Kart Super Circuit? Keeping with our followers' passion for retro gaming consoles and Pokemon memorabilia, we decided to mash the two together to create this hybrid Pokédex Game Boy console, taking what was once a damaged Pokédex console and turning it into a fully functional Game Boy Advance unit. Hopefully this video can showcase that with a little bit of ingenuity and a lot of fabrication, you too can create your own custom gaming console. If you enjoyed this video, then stay tuned, as we have a number of Game Boy Pokédex consoles coming soon. Until then, take care.